Good afternoon. Welcome to our asynchronous session. So this is already our second asynchronous session. So for this particular session, I'll just discuss to you the characteristics and classification of Philippine folk dances. So again, this is me. This is Sir J.M. Pastor, ang walang sawang nagmamahal sa inyo. Okay? So expect that this particular discussion is just easy. At the same time, it will really just require your understanding about Philippine culture and art, specifically in Philippine dancing. Okay? So I hope that during our synchronous session, you learned a lot about Philippine folk dances, so that the characteristics and classification will be easier for you to really understood. Okay? So I hope that you are doing great, and then expect that, my dear students, during our synchronous session, we will do some physical activities for at least 10 minutes per session. Okay? So, also, you will now start with your fitness journey. So, at least in a week, you're expected to perform or do some physical activities. So, ayan. So, this particular session, again, will just focus on characteristics and classification of Philippine folk dances. So, this is again Sir J.M. Pastor, and this is an asynchronous session. Okay, let's start. So, for the characteristics and classification of Philippine dances, my dear students, it is very important for you to really master the characteristics of Philippine folk dances, because that what makes those characteristics make our dances different from the other country. Okay? So yan ang reason kung bakit iba ang sayaw natin sa sayaw ng ibang bansa, and that serves as our identity. Okay, let's start. Okay, so for the characteristics of Philippine folk dances, okay, the first one is, in general, dancer stands apart. Okay, the dancer stand apart. Okay, majority of Philippine folk dances, especially those Maria Clara dances, every time that they will perform the dance, the boy is on the, what do you call this, left side of the girl. The girl is on the right side. Okay, so facing the audience, the girl is on the right side and the boy is on the left side. So we have this particular notion that the girl is always right. So in folk dancing, I don't know if that is really true in our context, but in folk dancing, that we have to follow that the girl should be always on the right side of the boy. Okay? So, yan. And also, there is little, if any, bodily contact. So, what does it mean? A majority of the Philippine dances, especially the Maria Clara dances, since it is very conservative in nature, since Maria Clara nga, diba, there are only very less bodily contact, especially for Muslim dances. For Muslim dances, there are dances na piniperform lang ng lalaki, piniperform din ng babae. But what I want to emphasize in this particular context is there are also some folk dances which are being presented by both girl and boy. Okay? So, also in Cordillera dances or dances from the northern part of Luzon, a majority of the dances is being performed according to the gender or to the sex. For example, for boys, we have the uyaoy. For girls, we have the bendian. Okay, so what I really want to mean by this is, these dances are very traditional in nature. So, when I say traditional in nature, the dances are being backed up by its cultural origin. So, by nature, Filipinos are conservative. So, that's why the bodily contact is very limited. Okay, and very little. Okay, yeah. And then most of the dances are done by pairs and or couple. This is very true for the rural dances and the Maria Clara dances. But for those, there are also partner dances or dances which is being performed by mga magpa-partner din. Konti lang konti lang sa Cordillera and konti din sa Mindanao. So majority of those dances which being done by pairs or couple are those Maria Clara and rural dances, di ba? Yung mga tinikling, it's by couple, Cariñosa, Maria Clara dance. In Bicol, we have the Pantomina, it's a couple dance. Because here in our particular place, my dear students, we were colonized and there's an influence of the Spaniards, especially the Christianity. Okay, that's why they brought Maria Clara to us. Okay, so those dances was brought by the Spaniard. So I hope that you are still okay and you can still understand what I am saying because you are just on the first part of our slide. Okay, there are marami pa. Okay, so again, in understanding Philippine folk dances, especially the characteristics of folk dances, we really have to go back to ourselves. So what do I mean by that? It will go back, it will always go back on how we know ourselves as a Filipino. What are our culture, our tradition, our customs, and what are the expected values that we should have as a Filipino. Okay pa? So yan. So that is the first one. That is the first three characteristics of Philippine folk dances. So again, in general, dances stands apart. Okay, and then there is little, if any, bodily contact. And most of the dancers are done by pairs or couple. Okay pa? So next is hand movements play an important part. That is correct because every hand movement signifies a certain meaning. For example, we have the kumintang, di ba? Ang kumintang sa folk dance is ganito. This is the kumintang. And this is written on the literature of folk dances. And then there is a variety of kumintang Tagalog in Ilocos. They also have kumintang Ilocano, which is a little bit closed, ang fist, and then ganyan. Some will say that it signifies that Ilocano people are really kuripot. Well, it's not. Di ba nag-manifest daw yung culture ng isang tao sa movement? Di ba in folk dancing, we really discussed that. Okay? That's why hand movements play an important part, my dear students. Especially that what really makes a dance or a folk dance very elegant and very good or very pleasing to see are it is because of the hand movements. Because di ba yung pag-graceful talaga nakikita sa hand movements ng folk dance. Okay? And then, most dances are in long formation. So, what do I mean by this? Majority of the dances, especially the habanera dances, the jota dances, those Maria Clara dances are in long formation. Diba? They are in a hall. Diba? Diba yung noong unang panahon, yung hall, nandyan yung mga mga babae at lalaki naka-Pilipinyana and nakapang-Amerikanong damit, diba? So, the formation that they are doing are in long formation. That's why sa anong tawag niyo dito? Sa folk dance, one of the terminologies is the cabaceras and the costados. Okay? As we go to our discussion in folk dancing, my dear students, we will discuss those terminologies. Don't worry, okay po? I will help you with that. And again, let me remind you, my role here is to help you understand our culture, our dances, and at the same time, to make you move. Okay? So, yan po. And then, most dances are in long formation. Majority also of the dances from Cordillera are people, and in Muslim are being executed through doing a long formation line or a long formation. Halimbawa po, the banga sa lidsid, di ba? Yung mga nakasuot ng banga, napakahilig nila habang nagpe-perform sila maggumawa ng long formation. Another is ragragsakan and kapiil sa munsala in Muslim. In Muslim dances, we have this thing that we call kapiil sa munsala, which the movements are what? Are in long formation. Same with ragragsakan, yung may salidumay, yung ay, salidumay, diway. Okay? So that is the music of the folk dance ragragsakan. Okay po? And then most dances begin and end with saludo. Okay, this is again very true in Maria Clara dances. But in other dances or in other places here in the Philippines, they have their way of doing the saludo. Okay, malay mo may interlude muna yung tugtog, yung music nila. So yun na pala ang form of saludo nila. So again, for the continuation of the characteristics of Philippine folk dances, we have the hand movements play an important part. And then most dances are in long formation and most dances begin and end with saludo. Okay pa? Next, um, next characteristics of Philippine dances or Philippine folk dances are dances from lowlands have more foreign elements than those found in the upland. The reason behind this, according to our history, because of colonization. We were invaded by the Spaniards, di ba? Sabi nila, in-invade tayo ng mga Spaniards dati, ng mga ng mga Spaniards. Tapos, ang una nilang sinalakay or in-invade or sinakop are those in downland. They are having a hard time to, what do you call this, to invade those people in the upland. That's why baga ang Christianity is sa mga nasa baba very common. Have you noticed that? And then my dear students, kaya, ganito, di ba? Kaya, that is the reason why those people or places in the lowlands has more foreign elements kasi mas madali silang sakupin kasi hindi na sila kailangan pang tumaas, nasa baba na tayo. Okay, in our geography. But what I want in this particular characteristic is, this is very true kaya baga si mga nasa taas kang bundok, the Ifugao people. Di ba ang Ifugao, when we say Ifugao mountain people, they were never, what do you call this, invaded. They were never invaded by the Spaniards. That's why until now there is a very good cultural preservation, especially and also in the Muslim, di ba? Sa Mindanao, marami pa din Muslim although we were colonized po ng Spaniards na dumala sa atin ng Christianity. Tapos hindi sila masyado naapektuhan. Pa tayo nasa Visayas, tapos tayo sentro ng Luzon, majority na sa atin ang mga Maria Clara dances, mga Jota Habanera, and that was brought to us by the Spaniards. That's why, if you are taga-Iriga, si mga taga-Iriga baga, sabi si mga taga-Iriga, mga aswang. So, have you heard that? Si mga taga-Iriga aswang. And when you hear that, if you are coming from a certain place, tapos nagsabi yung mga, may sabi nung mga nung mga friends mo, ang dami dun multo, you have to be proud. You have to be proud. Dapat maging proud kayo. Because before, according to our history, the Spaniards have a hard time to colonize their places. Kaya ang explanation dyan is, yung mga taga-Iriga daw, dati, hindi sila madaling nasakop. Since hindi sila madaling masakop and the Spaniards believe in Christianity, sabi nila, ay mga aswang yan, di ka mo magdyan. Okay? So that is the reason behind that. Because kapag sinabi ang lugar mo talaga na the full aswang, you have to be proud. You have to be proud. Okay? Yan. Another is war dances are found among non-Christian tribes. War dances are very present in Cordillera dances or in dances in the northern part of the Philippines. For example, the Idaw, the Palo-Palo. Okay? In some dances in Mindanao. But in Christian tribes, there is no war dance or war dances because of Christianity. Okay? Because of our religion. Okay po? So I hope that at least you familiarize the characteristics of Philippine folk dances. Okay po? So now, let me discuss to you we are now done with the characteristics of Philippine folk dances, and I hope that you learned something from that. So now, let us proceed to the general classification of Philippine folk dances. So, under the general classification of Philippine folk dances, the first one is geographical extent of origin. Okay? And remember that when we talk about general classification of Philippine folk dances, this is different from the types of folk dances. Diba, during our synchronous session, I discussed the types. The first one is national dances, those dances which are found in the whole archipelagic island of the Philippines. The second is the regional or the local dances, and the third one is the character created by group. In the general classification of Philippine folk dances, we have the first geographical extent of origin. Huwag kayong malito sa mamaya kasi sa geographical extent of origin may pagkakahawig sa types of folk dances. Sa nature, we already discussed that during our synchronous session, pero ngayon dadaanan ko na lang po. Okay pa? And then, for the movements, discuss din natin yan. And for the formation. Pero movements and formation, dadaanan lang po natin yan. We don't really have to emphasize or elaborate that. Pero ang geographical extent and the nature must be presented or discussed. So the first one under the classification of Philippine folk dances is the general classification. Okay, later, meron pang special classification. And under the general classification, we have these four. So let's start. Let's start first with the geographical extent of origin. Okay, ito na pala. Again,